This most recent episode of Friday Night Smackdown was the last Friday Night Smackdown on Fox. With Smackdown set to move to the USA Network, what kind of Smackdown are we going to see? Are we going to see something similar to what we're going to see with Raw on Netflix? Or is it going to feel the same way it felt when it was on Fox? Before we get too far into the video, I do have to apologize if I sound congested. I am dealing with horrible allergies right now, so if I am congested, I do apologize. And if there's any weird cuts, edits, whatever in this video, just bear with me. It is what it is, but hopefully we get through this relatively soon. I personally think that the first episode of SmackDown that airs on USA Network is going to be massive. You would assume that WWE wants to go all out with this episode of SmackDown, considering it is the first episode on USA Network. And we already got our first bit of big news for that episode, which is going to be obviously the Cody Rhodes Solo Sikoa match, which is in a steel cage. But I think that's just the tip of the iceberg with this show. I think that we could get a lot of surprises. I think we could see, and I think it could be a decent launching point for what we can see moving forward from SmackDown. I'm kind of going into this episode of SmackDown as kind of like a mini PLE because I really do think that they're going to try to pull out all the stops to make it a memorable show. We already talked about the Solo Sikoa and Cody Rhodes match in a steel cage. Let's talk through some of the surprises we could see, because I would not be surprised at all if we see John Cena make an appearance to kind of get his retirement tour started a little bit. And before I get a bunch of comments that say, well, he's more of a Raw guy than a SmackDown guy, the dude showed up on NXT for an episode. So right now, in this current day of WWE, anything is possible. So I would not be shocked at all if Cena comes back. Maybe we get Rock come back as the final boss. But again, I think WWE is going to pull out all the stops. So they're going to want to make it the best SmackDown that we have seen in a very long time. We don't know a ton of the matches quite yet. But again, the one that is confirmed is a steel cage match. And right now there haven't been any surprises, but nobody thought that John Cena was going to show up and announce his retirement at Money in the Bank. So who's to say that we don't see him return here, or maybe The Rock, or maybe it's somebody who's coming back from injury. Maybe Becky Lynch comes back, maybe Charlotte Flair comes back. There's a lot of different possibilities and a lot of different ways that this could go. But again, I'm really treating this as a mini PLE in a way. Another thing that I'm excited to see play out, what kind of content are we going to be getting from SmackDown while it's on USA Network? Are we going to get what we have now with Raw, or once Raw moves to Netflix and possibly has a little more freedom to do a little more Attitude Era-esque stuff, are we going to get the same type of stuff on SmackDown, on NXT? We obviously know from the Attitude Era that the USA Network can play WWE's game with the edgier kind of content, but I talked about it in a recent video that the culture now is just so vastly different from what it was during the Attitude Era. So maybe USA Network doesn't want to necessarily take those risks that they were willing to take back in the Attitude Era. But I'm very curious to see how it plays out because, again, with all these rumors about Raw going TV14, where does that leave SmackDown? And where does that leave NXT? Because Raw is going to be the only show that is on a streaming platform. Obviously, USA Network has SmackDown, and NXT is going to be on the CW. So what happens if Raw gets a little more freedom and SmackDown and NXT are kind of restricted a little bit more? Because it might take some getting used to, and it'll most likely be a big adjustment. And you would assume that WWE wants to carry the same type of programming amongst their three shows. The last thing that I really want to talk about is, could we see a legitimate, real brand split with all the movement of shows? Raw is going to be on Netflix, SmackDown is on USA Network, and NXT is on the CW. Those are three different platforms and channels to watch. So with them not being on the same show anymore, like what we had with Raw and NXT, could we see a legitimate brand split happen? I think that it's definitely on the table when it comes to Raw and SmackDown, and we've been getting these teases with it happening from Nick Aldis and Adam Pearce. It really seems like that there is some animosity there whenever those two are on screen together, and considering that Triple H loves his longtime storytelling, maybe we get a real brand split this time and we don't get guys who just show up whenever they want, because it just creates chaos and it makes the draft pretty much useless. So adding a legitimate brand split, you could do so many things. It makes the draft relevant again. You would be able to bring back Survivor Series in its traditional form and have the two brands go at it and keep the War Games, instead of having these makeshift teams come together and have a War Games match, which is fine, and they can still do that if they want to. But I do really think that that a real brand split would do very well. Again, I think it'll make the draft relevant, and it just makes things a lot more easier to follow, as opposed to what we have now, where it's hard to keep track on what shows people are on now, because they just seem to show up on whatever show they want. That is going to do it for this video here. I do want to hear from you guys and what you think we could see with SmackDown moving to USA Network. Do you think we're going to get the same thing that we're going to get with Raw on Netflix, or do you think it's going to be Raw's just going to be this kind of own type of show and have the more edgier kind of content, and leave SmackDown and NXT to be a little more on the PG side? Or do you think all three shows are going to be the same and we're going to get the Attitude Era 2.0? At this point, I'm just ready to sit back, watch good wrestling, and enjoy the ride that WWE always seems to take us on. So once again, that is going to do it for this video here. I do hope you enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, hit the like button. If you really enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button. It would really mean a lot to me and help out the channel as we continue to grow. As always, down below in the description is our Linktree link. There you can find all of our social media pages. I highly suggest going and checking out our X page. Over on X, we do updates on every Monday Night Raw, Friday Night SmackDown, and all of the PLEs. And above all else, I want that to be a place for wrestling fans to go and talk about wrestling. If you're in my situation, you don't have a lot of people to talk to about wrestling, maybe swing by the X page when we're doing updates for this episode of Friday Night SmackDown on USA. Maybe it's for you at the end of the day. But again, that is going to do it for this video here. I do apologize again for just the kind of lack of energy. I'm really struggling right now, to be completely honest with you. So I do apologize. Hopefully we'll be back up and running soon. But right now, I'm not gonna lie, I'm struggling here. So if you did make it to this point of the video, I do seriously thank you guys a lot for all the support that I've been getting recently. We're slowly starting to build up our numbers on this channel, and I'm really happy with where we're going, because we're still trending in the right direction, which is always a good thing. So as always, stay tuned for more content coming in the future. We'll see you next time.